So Blizzard's 1.2.0.5 update from midnight is basically here, and honestly, I think this is a kind of patch where the name makes it sound smaller than it actually is. Because when people hear 1.2.0.5, a lot of time they think, okay, probably some tuning, a few fixes, maybe a couple of side features, nothing too crazy. But this one is actually adding a pretty decent amount of stuff all at once. It goes live April 21st, and the big pillars are Void Assaults, Ritual Sites, Void Forge, Decor Duels, Abyss Anglers, and then a bunch of class and systems changes around that. And I think the real question with a patch like this isn't just what's in it. It's more like, what actually matters? Especially if you're a player who cares about gearing, open world progression, Mythic Plus, or just whether the patch gives you a reason to log in beyond the usual routine. Because not every feature hits the same way. Some of this looks like real progression value, and some of it looks more like extra side content depending on what kind of player you are. The first big thing is Void Assaults. Blizzard says these are happening in Eversong Woods and Zul'Aman, with Void strikes rotating on a weekly basis through different parts of those zones. Then, once enough of those are completed, you get the bigger Void Incursion scenario, which is meant to take a lot more players to finish. So if you like world content that feels like it has some actual structure and escalation to it, this is probably one of the main additions you'll notice right away. The next feature is probably the one I think a lot of players are going to care about the most, and that's Ritual Sites. These are repeatable 1 to 5 player instance activities, kind of in the Dell family, but with their own structure. There are 2 launch locations, Dagger's Pine Point in Eversong Woods and Broken Throne in Zul'Aman, and you go into a curious obelisk where you choose your difficulty tier and later on, the challenges you want active. Blizzard says there are 5 tiers, and from tiers 3 through 5 you have to select extra challenges before entering. That already makes it sound more interesting than just go in and clear some mobs, because now there's actual risk-reward decision-making built into the activity. Now, if you care more about gear progression, then the real headline is probably Void Forge. This is where Blizzard is adding Nebulous Void Cores and Ascendant Void Cores, and honestly, this is a part of the patch that looks the most important for players who are actively gearing through raids, Mythic Plus, Bountiful Delves, or Nightmare Prey hunts. Blizzard says you unlock the Void Forge with Decimus, and then Nebulous Void Cores can be used to target random loot from the activity you completed, with that item getting removed from that activity's loot pool for that difficulty once you get it. That means it's basically a structured bad luck protection style system for chasing specific items over time. And this is where it gets especially relevant for Mythic Plus players. Blizzard says if you spend a Nebulous Void Core after completing a Mythic Plus dungeon, the item level is tied to Great Vault level rewards for that Keystone bracket, with Myth 1/6 at plus 10 and above. They also say the number of Nebulous Void Cores available to a character goes up by 2 each week for the rest of the season, and that raid items cost 2 cores, while things like Mythic Plus cost 1. On top of that, you can buy a Nebulous Void Core from Vault Keeper Elisa for 6 Delassian tokens of merit, and those bought cores do not count against the weekly cap. So if you've been annoyed by loot chase randomness, this is probably the most meaningful system in the patch. Then there's the second layer of Void Forge, which is Ascendant Void Cores. Once you build the Ascendant Nilhammer, Blizzard says you can start getting these from Season 1 raids, Mythic Plus, Bountiful Delves, and Nightmare Prey hunts, and they're used to increase the item level of eligible weapons and trinkets. The catch is that they only work on fully upgraded hero, myth, and maximum quality radiance crafted weapons and trinkets. So this is clearly aimed more at players who are already deep enough into endgame that they want another progression lever on their best pieces, not people who are just gearing their first character casually. Then you got Decor Duels, which is honestly kind of funny in the middle of all this darker midnight stuff. Blizzard says it's a team versus team hide-and-seek mode in Silver Moon City, launched through the Group Finder PvP tab, where one side hides as housing decor items and the other side tries to find them. It comes with rewards like a mount, toys, and housing decor. So this is obviously not a power progression feature, but it does look like the kind of thing that could be genuinely fun if you want a lighter activity, or if you're the kind of player who likes goofy side content breaking up the usual grind. The other more side content feature is Abyss Anglers. Blizzard describes it as a repeatable event off the coast of Zul'Aman where you team up, spear as many fish as you can, rack up points, and unlock fishing rewards, diver gear upgrades, and cosmetics. You enter through Depth Diver Jeju, move through whirlpools, use a harpoon, and go deeper for better treasure. This one feels very much like side activity content, but sometimes those end up being better than expected if the rewards are good enough or the gameplay loop is just weirdly fun. And then, outside the headline features, the patch also include a lot of class tuning and a spread of updates across dungeons and raids, PvP, professions, housing UI, and accessibility. Even just in the visible notes, there are class-specific changes for specs like Frost and Unholy Death Knight, Demon Hunter, and multiple Druid specs, plus some cosmetic customization additions like new Demon Hunter Eye options. So even if you don't care about world content or side modes, there's still a decent chance something in your class or role gets touched here. So my overall read on 1.2.0.5 is this. If you only look at the patch number, it looks like a small update. But if you actually look at what Blizzard is adding, this is a pretty meaningful mid-season content drop. Ritual Sites and Void Forge are the features I think matter most, especially if you care about progression and endgame. Void Assaults look like the main world content pillar, and then Decor Duels and Abyss Anglers are more like the side dishes. Maybe not the reason you log in if you're a hardcore player, but definitely the kind of stuff that can make the patch feel more alive if it lands well. If I had to say who this patch is really for, I'd say it's strongest for players who want more structured, repeatable content and a more targeted way to chase gear without just endlessly hoping drops line up. If you're purely looking for some massive seasonal reset, this probably isn't that. But if you're looking for kind of update that adds more things to actually do, gives more ways to progress, and adds a couple weird side modes on top, then yeah, 1.2.0.5 looks more useful than the number makes it sound. So yeah, that's the patch. Void Assaults, Ritual Sites, Void Forge, Decor Duels, Abyss Anglers, and class/system tuning all hitting in one update. And honestly, the real test now is whether this stuff feels good once players get their hand on it. Because on paper, some of it looks genuinely strong, especially Ritual Sites and Void Forge.